Welcome to Uncopyable Women in Business. I'm Kay Miller, also known as Muffler Mama. I've been the #1 salesperson in a male-dominated industry, a successful entrepreneur for over 30 years, and now my mission is to help you build a business and brand nobody else can compete with. If you're ready to break out of the pack and create your own uncopyable advantage, stay tuned. My guests and I are here to help. My guest today is Colleen Stanley, president and founder of Sales Leadership, Inc. Colleen was recently named the #1 sales global guru for 2024. What an honor. As a longtime mentor and mentee, she co-wrote the brand new book, Be the Mentor Who Mattered, where Colleen and co-author Leanne Tiemann share their own experience combined with the stories, experience, and wisdom from 25 others from all walks of life. Today, we're talking about how you can use the power of mentorship to make an impact on others while growing opportunities in your own business and life. Colleen, welcome to the podcast.
Kay, thank you for having me. So nice to be your guest.
I really appreciate it. Before we started recording, my husband, Steve Miller, who's a long-time NSA member, did all kinds of stuff with them, teaching, being on the board, different things. So it's cool that you guys have so many, connections in common. That was really
that was a fun conversation.
And
then Kay kicked him out.
No, I did. I kicked him out. This is my show. But this show in particular is about you, Colleen, and I am going to hold up your book. And
thank
if you're not watching, it's a cool cover with the tree, the mentor who mattered, and it's got belief, support, encourage, advice, make a difference, be the difference. So I love this book. I love your information, wisdom, all that experience, and also Leanne's too, but you've got some fascinating stories from pretty impressive people too. So I want you just to talk about a little bit about your background. You started in sales and then where this passion project, as you said, came from.
Yeah. So I had the good fortune, Kay, of starting over 30 years ago with a small company that today is the largest in the world in their industry. And it runs under the umbrella of Varsity Brands. And I was with Varsity Spirit Corporation. So I was actually a member of their very first sales team. And so, as you know, if you've ever worked with a smart startup or a small company, which I know you have, you're given great opportunities. And now you're not given a lot of training and coaching. So, you're just running really fast. However, when I look back on my life, while we didn't have formal training and coaching or even mentoring, I received a lot of mentoring. I had some terrific mentors while I was with that company for 10 years. So I think this project had been percolating for a long time to let people know, because Varsity today is over $3 billion in revenue. And I believe part of the reason is this culture they established of helping and peer mentorship, bosses being kind and helpful and thoughtful. So it's been percolating for a while.
That culture is so powerful. I've talked to a lot of people about the leaders who want to create other leaders versus followers, and, who make you feel good versus making you feel under pressure and bad. So that's really important. Very impressive that they did that. As I mentioned, in my early career, women were not kind to me. So then I actually, though, found a woman who really was a strong mentor, helped me advance in my career. And it made such a difference. It made such a difference. So how do you create those relationships if you're listening and you want to make this impact and be impacted by mentorship?
Our goal with this book, because as I looked over my life, mentors, and I've got stories from when I was in grade school all the way up to current. And my goal was really to show that you don't have to have a formal mentorship program. No, those are wonderful. However, if you take a look in corporate America, there's a lot of small to mid-sized companies. And so they might look at mentorship as like, oh, it's one more thing on our to-do list. We don't have the time or the expertise. So our encouragement is to say, mentorship can happen in a moment. it can happen in a conversation. Be looking up, looking around. Who can you offer encouragement, support? And so that was the goal of the book, that everybody's got something to contribute. And the second thing I would say, Kay, is that I think there's a myth out there that you can only be a mentor if you've achieved greatness in life. You've got a big title, you've got big offices, big money. And with some of the stories we share, is you'll find mentorships show up in all shapes and forms. And if they are a person of prestige, great, but you don't need a title to contribute.
That's a good point. So many of us, including super successful women on the show, have imposter syndrome, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we can not be perfect and still mentor someone. And in an instant, like you said, it doesn't take a whole big, long relationship. I didn't think about like that. I really didn't think of it. And you even mentioned that a mentor, maybe you don't have contact with them, but there's somebody that you admire. Did I read that right?
They could be somebody, we put in the introduction, a mentor could be somebody that you're looking at from a distance. Mentors can occur in books. I have what I call book mentors there. And, they're leading the life that I want to lead, or I'm reminded that I want to lead. And so you may not even know that going through the grocery store and how you treat the clerk could be a mentor moment for somebody that was going to be short, not looking at them, not saying hi, thank you. It happens all the time. And hopefully, and we're hearing this from people that are reading the book, they're all kind of having the same realization going, oh, I didn't even really regard that as a mentor moment. That was a mentor conversation, and it was a life-changing conversation. So there's some light bulbs going on with some of our readers, which is fun to hear about.
That's a great way to look at it, because it is intimidating, I think, to say, oh, how would I be a mentor? How would I frame this, set it up, what's expected? So that is not nearly as daunting. It just shows that we can all make a difference in a moment. And you're right. The person working the check stand, if you're lucky enough to get a person and not a tin can, like I'm paying to buy groceries and now I'm doing the work.
But I know, it's like, okay, and you got to pay attention. Am I playing with a card? Yeah, you're right. So that's a good point. Maybe that wasn't the greatest example.
No, it is a good example, because even in the U-Scan, being a little bit uncoordinated as I am, it's like, attendant on the way. And I do want to treat those people really kindly. And of course, what you send out comes back to you. And you're a great example of that. It's not just for making the world better. It's for making you better. And so I really, really enjoyed that perspective. And as you said, it's kind of a light bulb moment. I think people don't look at that in the same way. What about being a mentor yourself? And you're leading by example, but do you go beyond that in finding people to impact and mentor?
There's two things I do. I'm probably more intentional. It's like, I think you write about what you want to do better, need to do better. And so like with my previous books, I needed to improve my emotional intelligence. So guess what? Wrote a couple books about it. And so what I'm finding in writing this book, I've become more intentional. So for example, I work with CU Denver, and they have a program called Empowering Women in Business. So I've been their guest speaker for probably 3 years now. Well, this year, guess what? I raised my hand and said, I'll be a mentor. So I am mentoring a first generation student, and she's terrific. I mean, she comes to the mentor session, she's got her questions, and then really all I do is provide her what I've known over the years. And then she comes back and applies the advice, and she has more. And in fact, what was interesting to me is at our last session, and this isn't confidential, so I would not share anything that would be such, but she said, have you ever taken a big risk in your life? I said, yeah, I moved to Denver, Colorado, didn't have a job. I didn't know anybody, but I'm going to get into sales, training, and speaking. And her eyes went like this, but see, looking at it, because now I have a good business and lots of stability. And so we had a conversation about what that took. And then the downside of doing that, it worked out, but there was some first couple of years where I was like, what have I done? Right. And that was after being a VP of sales. So,
I like what you said. Raise your hand. I told you I want specific things that you listening can do. And think about that. Who can where can you raise your hand? Maybe even who can you raise your hand to? I told you that I have a client, and one of the employees, her name's Kinsey, and I love her. She started as an intern during COVID, and she's really young, and she was just a sponge. She loved the information. We clicked. I felt like I had things to offer her, and as I mentioned, I learn just as much from her. So I think that is, again, it's not just a one-way thing, it's a two-way thing that can benefit you, both ways. And it does relate to EQ. So I don't know if you want to segue into that, or you had something else.
Well, I was just going to say, as the mentee, don't get discouraged if you ask someone and they say no. And don't do one of these, okay, I knew that wasn't going to work out. It wasn't going to work. This is where, okay, have the belief that at this point in your life, this person wasn't supposed to be your mentor. However, keep asking, because, if you're a sponge and you soak up information and then you apply it, I'm going to tell you, somebody like me will give you all the time you need. Now, if I encounter someone that turns into be a yeah, but mentee, even though I have pretty high empathy, it starts plummeting because I'm not a real excuse person. I'm not a yeah, but person. So I would encourage people, if you get rejected the first time, just move on to the next one. There are plenty of people out there that are generous. They're just simply not being asked.
That's something you said in the book, and I actually wrote a note on that. One of your little mini chapters. I don't remember who it was from, but you just ask. It's kind of like
from one of our contributors.
Yeah. It's like sales, which you are an expert in too. And a lot of times we forget to just ask and say, is this going to work for you? Should I go ahead and write this up? It works with a lot of different things. Just ask. So I do want to kind of talk about EQ with emotional EQ. What's the Q? Emotional.
It's called emotional quotient. And I think if you get real technical, emotional intelligence are maybe all the skills. The emotional quotient is the composite of those. And over the years, they're frankly used interchangeably, EQ and EI. And so for the listening audience, don't get too worried about it. Just put it under the big umbrella of emotional intelligence.
So funny that I said it and I didn't think I was going to get stuck, because I know it's emotional intelligence.
People do.
And I thought, wait, what's the Q? So thank you for clearing that up. So how does empathy that you need in sales, we talked about, you also have the danger of not being assertive, but how does that relate to the mentorship?
So when you take a look at empathy, and most people know the definition, and I get a little worried that it's almost become cliche. Empathy is walking a mile in somebody else's shoes. Empathy is knowing and caring about what somebody else is thinking or feeling. And what I always caution people on is that's not enough. Empathy is a thinking skill before it's a verbal skill. So that ties into emotional self-awareness, because if you're not carving out quiet time in the morning to really reflect on, hey, something landed on me yesterday that didn't land quite right. Why? You have some empathy for yourself, but you spot the emotion, which allows you then to spot it in other people easier. And so empathy as it relates to mentorship, you've got to be aware, like maybe that person is having imposter syndrome. Kay, you and I both worked in male-dominated businesses. I have never worried about working in male-dominated businesses. I grew up surrounded by 4 brothers, so I have never viewed myself as a woman in business. I just view myself as a business person. Now, where I have to have empathy, not everyone had that background. Not everybody has that background informing them. So I could go really judgmental quickly when somebody's like, well, I walk in a room with guys. And I'm like, yeah. And so that would be where I have to bring my empathy, because I probably play as well there. Like I said, when you're surrounded by 4 brothers, it's either keep up or get left behind. And so that would be a place there. And I think you were also talking about assertiveness. Kay, did you have something you wanted to hook onto that?
Yes. So empathy, I just want to comment about being the only woman maybe in the room. And sometimes that works out great. I've had guests that say they have had to really claim their spot at the table. But a lot of times, one thing that I just have really appreciated through this podcast is that men want to include us. A lot of it is they don't know how. So let's not put that on them and think that we know how they feel. So I think you have a great perspective on that. And yes, empathy, especially since we are also sales. Everything to me is sales. I'm sure to you, too. We're selling ourselves. But sometimes that empathy is a soft skill. I think it keeps us from getting it done and being assertive. So how do you see that?
Well, what can happen is if you are a person that has a lot of empathy, there might be a point where you feel sorry for people. And so at that point, you're going to discount your product or service, or even though you absolutely know you need this product or service or you're out of business. And I'm going to go extreme there. Well, if you've got so much empathy, you kind of won't say that or you'll sugarcoat it. And I remember an early mentor sharing something with me, and he said, Colleen, your responsibility, if you're meeting with a prospect and you see this train coming down the track and it's going to get derailed, it is your responsibility to let that prospect know. Now, if they decide not to, you can at least live with the fact that you brought up that issue. And so I think bringing up that issue is tuning into how it could land on them. And so there's a languaging around that because, if somebody's in denial or they're a little embarrassed. I mean, I've been with prospects that I have more sophistication around sales than they do. Well, I have to have a lot of empathy for that because they are working really hard on trying to make their business run and they have no clue how to hire salespeople, put together sales plans. And so if I come in and I've done this, I literally didn't get a piece of business because I knew I came in, Miss Susie, smart stuff, and I wasn't reading the room. And I finally did read the room. And then Kay, what I said is, let's stop here. I said, whoops, right now, I just hit my keyboard. I hope that didn't show up on your screen.
I don't see it. Don't worry about it.
But I said, right now, you're probably looking at me and thinking, I don't even know the questions to ask to know if you're any good. That's empathy. See, what was going on in this gentleman's mind that's trying to grow a company from 10 million to 50, he didn't even know the questions to ask. But I'm coming in, here's what you need to do, here's the structure, da-da-da-da. So because I lacked empathy, I put him probably into a little bit of an embarrassment state, fight or flight state, or just paralyzed state. And that was a good lesson for me.
Definitely relates to the EQ. Meet your customer where they are. And yes, we are the experts. And, if someone says, I already learned all that on the internet, it drives me crazy. We are the experts, but we want to relate to our customers on a human level and make them feel good. And that is a lot that transfers to the mentorship too.
It does. So if you've got somebody that's, coming in and and at this point, you have a lot more wisdom. You can call us elders, you can call us sages. And what we have to remember is that I think somebody coined a beginner's mind. What's it like to be at their state, at their stage, at their age? And so again, it's applying empathy. Hey, I can understand that. However, that's where assertiveness comes in. And then after you've had a conversation, then you can assert and say, here's what I really think the path is for you. And so what's important about the combination of those two is when people feel heard, they can hear you. But if they do not feel heard, they cannot hear any piece of advice you're giving. And as a high driver, I have been guilty and still do it. I'll jump into solutions and advice mode instead of demonstrating, it's got to be really hard right now. And I can see where that's confusing or why you're feeling that way. And, whatever the language is. So it's empathy first, advice second, empathy first, assertiveness second. And those are usually pretty good in most situations.
And I think we both, I'm going to generalize with you. I like to talk. And salespeople often talk too much. So what you just talked about, it reminds me of the saying that people want to be understood before they want to understand. That's what you said. So yes, we need to listen to people. People want that. And I think maybe even more so in our age of technology and all of the things that are going on. Let's talk a little bit about branding. You were kind enough to read my book, Uncopyable You. I also co-authored with somebody, I can't remember Oh, yes. My husband's Steve Miller. And
That guy.
you're a woman of faith, and you don't hide that. You don't beat it over our heads, but that's very important to you. And that makes you authentic. That tells me something about you, that not only those are your beliefs, but you're okay sharing that. That might drive somebody away. You're not for everybody, but you want to be really, really for somebody. So, that is part of your brand. So tell me about how you feel about that.
Well, here's coming from a faith-based, I was fortunate when I was a child. I went to Catholic school, 1st through 8th grade, and I had great nuns. So when everybody else is complaining, I had terrific nuns that also served as mentors to me. And so I would say what it does for me is that when I can feel myself going into self-doubt or wondering, oh, what's going to be the outcome of this? Then I turn back to faith and just know the outcome is going to be the right outcome. The answer will come when it's supposed to. Now, I still do the work I need to. This isn't just sitting back. It's like, okay. Let God or whoever you believe in take care of it.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Yeah, it's a parallel track for me. So what that does for me, it decreases a lot of stress. And that's what I believe faith as much as anything. It also, on the days that I fail and I fall from grace, it makes me go back and say, not because I wrote books on EQ, you know what, this isn't the type of person you were designed to be. You're designed to do better. And so, most of what we need to do is watch what comes out of our mouth, because the mouth reflects your heart. So there's days I have to sit there and go, seriously, you said that yesterday, or you thought that? So that's what it does for me. It keeps me aligned to the person I want to be.
And we are always so hard on ourselves. I do believe it's even more so for women, although it's definitely, it still applies to men. But I do think we as women have some extra challenges. Not everybody agrees with that, but we are hard on ourselves. And when you say something, I do think it's fascinating that we listen more than anyone else. We're listening to what we say. We're listening to our words. I've had women on the show that say, I was just born a sunny personality, and I'm jealous because I have to work at that, and things like what you say and how you listen as much as others. That's a really good point. So what if someone is listening? We're going to talk branding, so I'm going to give you a little time to think. Your brand it has to be intentional to be authentic, and then you have to be able to communicate it, of course. So how would you talk to someone about how they could determine what their brand is? And feel free to use the information in my book.
Well, the one thing that struck me, and I wrote it down, was that, and it took me back because I wasn't expecting it. Your brand could be where people remember you for being generous, unselfish, right? Giving. And so the reason that struck me as we were getting ready for our conversation today, I thought, well, that could be a mentor brand, right? So you take a look at it. And I think if you take that to sales, Kay, if you're the person that always shows up at an appointment, whether it's with a prospect or customer, and your goal is, I'm doing 110% here. And like right now, I don't teach sales training anymore. I still work with sales managers and EQ. So I had a call last week, and I had told this is a salesperson that went through my training about 10 years ago. So I said, well, I don't do training, but I'm happy to get on the call and see what you need. And so I'm going to tell you, I was giving them a lot of free consulting around sales training. And guess what? They're probably going to do something around emotional intelligence training for their team. It didn't matter to me. I knew that they were having some challenges, and if I've got the information, and then the more I can gather, I can refer them to the right resource at this point. So I think if you always show up with that little, I'm going to do it 110% here, you're going to be just fine. When I hear of quiet quitting, I have to tell you, I just want to put my nails on a chalkboard. I'm like, seriously, quit. Don't go quietly, quit and go someplace that you're happy. Now there, did you see lack of empathy there?
Yes, I know, but you're right. Don't phone it in and just hang on to something. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help them. you do have an incredible network. So I want to mention that you know a lot of people. I like the saying, it doesn't count who you know really as much as who knows you. And a lot of people, including my husband, I know her. I really like a couple points, and then I'll ask you to maybe close this up with getting back to the mentorship, which is the book that you wrote, which again is right here. And it's The Mentor Who Mattered. I like that, that way you phrase it, because I think it tells me that you're looking back on your life, you're accomplishing something, and you're thinking about, like you said, maybe a teacher that you had in grade school.
Yeah.
That person mattered. And we all want to leave our thumbprint, our impact on the world imprint.
Absolutely.
You talked about what you could do. Raise your hand and say, I'm willing to be a mentor. Ask someone if they will be your mentor, just like in sales. And then remember, you can be a mini mentor wherever you go.
Yes.
Kathy Lee Gifford. I used to watch Regis and Kathy Lee before. That's the only time I watched it. My daughter's little. She said, bloom where you're planted. Sounds so corny, but it's so true. You can make such a difference. And we all know that you meet someone who goes the extra mile or doesn't. So let's talk about, just as we close this up, what advice would you give someone who wants to be a better mentor and mentee?
Here's the first piece of advice. Look up. I am telling you, we are a look down society, and we're always on phones. In the book, I talk about, I go on a little bit of a rant, where if you go into company meetings, and let's say they're in person or even on Zoom, but let's use in person to create the picture. So everybody comes in today and they've got their computers and they put their phone there. So it's like a command and control center, right? And then, you've got colleagues sitting next to you, and you're sitting there shooting off the last email. And even during meetings, they're sending emails. And what's fascinating to me, Kay, is that we keep talking about employees aren't engaged. The importance of having a best friend at work. Well, guess what? The way you get a best friend at work, you actually talk to the people you work with. So I think you've got to look up, and as leaders, they've got to start setting better expectations, because when you look up, you can see a colleague, maybe in a meeting. In the airport, you can see somebody that's lost. I look for that all the time. I don't travel overseas a whole lot, but when I have, I am grateful for somebody that answers my question. And so I look up a lot, even in the airport, like who's lost, who could use some help and such. So the first one I'd say is look up. The second is you are qualified. Everybody has something to give. And the third is you have time. And even if you're somebody that's in that sandwich generation, you got aging parents, you're raising kids, you have 30 minutes a month. Think of that, just 30 minutes a month to devote to somebody. And that might mean eliminating 30 minutes on your social media, or 30 minutes here, or it means calling somebody and offering advice or inviting them on a hike, but we've all got the time.
Those are great pieces of advice. I know that everyone listening will be better for this interview. And I do encourage you to get this book. We're recording in November, and this came out in November, right? Or
yes. Be the Mentor Who Mattered. Yeah, we're officially launching.
Yeah, Be the Mentor Who Mattered by Colleen Stanley and Leanne Tiemann. Pick that up, and it's really a great book. It's a lot of fun too.
Oh, thank you.
So, appreciate Colleen, I really appreciate you being here. And
thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
And I love it. What's your handle is Muffler Mama. I love that.
Muffler Mama. And I wore steel toe boots back in those days. And I said, walk a mile in your customer's steel toe boot.
Ooh, I might have to ask you if I can take that one.
Yes, you're welcome to it. So anyway, Colleen, thank you again so much.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncopyable Women in Business. If you enjoyed it, please follow, rate, and review the show. And be sure to visit beuncopyable.com/K. Always remember, be uncopyable.